More than about those reflections and bring in via Skype an award-winning music journalist and author Percy Mabandu, who's joining us from Johannesburg tonight. Percy, evening to you. Thank you for your time. So I want us to go back a few decades and go back to the birth of Ladysmith Black Mambazo, because it wasn't what many would expect of the birth of an international superstar group.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and hello to ENCA World. Yeah, look, I mean, it's a tough day, but when someone like Joseph Shabalala dies, you know, you also consider that this is somebody who has left a very strong legacy, you know, has built very strong institution in Ladysmith Black Mambazo. But yeah, it started in the, you know, the journey goes back to the 50s, you know, and this is in KZN, and in fact, the band started in 1959 when we went solo. And it was called as in Nyama, the Black Ones. It was only a couple of years later that he actually decided to call it Ladysmith Black Mambazo, you know, adding the Mambazo, which means the X, of course. After having, you know, had dreams, he says, that moved him to actually take the music thing much more seriously. And that dream has flowered over the decades. We know now that Ladysmith Black Mambazo has had 9 Grammy Awards and countless nominations at the global stage.
And you know, Percy, when you look at the origins of Tsatamia music, a lot of people were making similar music at the time when Ladysmith Black Mambazo rose to stardom. What was it about the Mambazo sound specifically that resonated so much, do you think, with fans in many places in the world?
Well, I mean, I think first you have to start thinking about what Tsatamia is. Tsatamia is a modern music that comes out of the migrant labor system, that comes out of the mining labor system, you know. And when you're thinking about the migrant labor system in this part of the world, at least as it is created by the mining environment, you're talking about a very syncretic music that brings together people and cultures from across the Southern African subcontinent. It's larger than the South African experience, you know. So you're thinking about, you know, cultural influences from Malawi, Mozambique, and all the other parts of the South African landscape. I'm thinking about migrant workers from the Eastern Cape, people coming in from the Northwest, and into either the Reef or even in Durban, because Durban is also a very big attraction space for people looking for work. And they bring culture with them. And out of that, this unique thing called Tsatamia comes up. In fact, initially, Ladysmith Black Mambazo was not a Tsatamia band. It was just a choir. It's only, you know, at a later, slightly later in its development that Joseph Shabalala discovers Tsatamia, and because they were so successful and they were winning those competitions, you know, that were happening on the mines and at community halls, that they started going into it. It's his ability to bring in the choral sound, which is a big sound here if you think about the influence of the church, and of course you're thinking about also the traditional musics and that kind of syncretic sound that comes out of the mine, and fusing it with gospel music into something that's very uniquely his, that he found a sound that he could take to the world. And as you know, around 72, he signed a record deal with Gallo Music and a producer called Weston Goss, who's one of the most interesting people in terms of our music history, gives him a record deal. And Joseph Shabalala then becomes a Christian himself. Initially, I mean, the records that were coming out would have a section of gospel music and a section of Tsatamia. And as the band evolved, that sound kind of nicely merged into each other. And then, of course, in 1986, when Paul Simon came here and they made Graceland, you and I start discovering Ladysmith Black Mambazo as a generation with that song Homeless, you know. And from then on, I mean, really the world was their oyster.
And as those international collaborations came along, you mentioned Paul Simon. They also had a track, I remember, with Dolly Parton. But in the sound that Ladysmith Black Mambazo had, it was interesting because there are songs that you listen to and you feel terribly sad because they just capture the time in which the group existed. And then you hear the likes of Hello, My Baby, which is more upbeat, more playful, and just how they were able to bring that in and infuse it with the gospel that you reference as well.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we think of choirs as this fun kind of project, but it's actually a very difficult project to run. And the success in terms of the breadth of the music and the complexity of the compositions only speak to the genius musically of Joseph Shabalala as a composer, to be able to bring in all of these different influences, and having defined a particular sound of Ladysmith Black Mambazo, that he's able to then make it travel into different contexts. I mean, they have an album with the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and he's done work with Desiree, with Dolly Parton that you're speaking about. Throughout all of these collaborations with Oliver Mtukudzi as well, the unique sound of Ladysmith Black Mambazo remains intact, even as he moves it into different contexts and different musics. And I think being able to deal with, I think at some point the band had like 32 members. Can you imagine how many people that is? To be able to control, manage, and then creatively marshal into a particular sound that remains intact. And at all of these times, you're dealing with people who are finding their own inspirations in the music. But Joseph Shabalala is able to allow them to express themselves while remaining within the context of the identity of the group. I think as an arranger, as a composer, and as a band leader, or as a choir master, as it were, we have to give him credit as well there.
Just on that score then, let me ask you about how the sound of Ladysmith Black Mambazo has shaped some of today's music, if at all.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in seeing how Iskatamia as a sound has sort of evolved with the, as people discover also kind of doo-wop bands from the States, these a cappella. I mean, I remember Africapella was another band. The Swell is another sort of singing group. I know that there's a group, in fact, that sings exactly, well, not exactly, but stays true to the Stratamia. Is called The Legacy. So the music is sort of moving beyond the Ladysmith Black Mambazo choir, if you want to call them that, into other avenues with younger people discovering it. And I think that's exactly how it should be, that it should grow and develop into different sounds. And young people should find their own way of articulating that sound into a new context and time.
Percy Mabandu, writer and journalist, thank you so much for your time tonight.